I said, what does it mean to be human in 2021? And the collective said, well, are you saying that you weren't human in 2020 and earlier?
Well,
So they really are comical. That wasn't even their funniest line, but they said, no, we know what you mean. And so it was interesting. And I think a lot of the viewers are going to resonate with this, but what they said is, what the question really is what is it like to be aware in 2021? They explained that in 2020 and earlier, we were seeking knowledge, seeking understanding, seeking our truth, learning, building a knowledge base, a foundation. And at this point, we've done that. We have roots now. We have grounded ourselves. We know what our truth is. And so in 2021, it's about being aware of that truth and standing in that truth.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Quantum Realms 2021. And I today welcome my good friends, Will and Allison Brown. Hi, you guys.
hey, what's going on, everyone?
I'm so excited to be able to chat with you today. And I'm so excited that you're coming this way for a visit very, very soon. But today we want to talk about what you do in the metaphysical world and some of your services, some of the messages you're getting, and of course, what you think it means to be human in 2021. But before we get there, would you please introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Will Brown. I am a psychic medium and trance channel. I also am a Reiki Master teacher. Also a veteran who both myself and Allison have started a nonprofit that takes Reiki into the VA for veterans' health. And just in 2021, I've started to explore sound healing. So you may see some of the instruments on the back wall, but it's been quite an adventure so far in 2021.
Super.
And Allison Brown, in many ways, we partner up, but on my own, I do beyond quantum healing. That's one of the primary modalities that I'd love to work with. I started out as a Reiki practitioner. I am a Reiki Master teacher as well. And I'm a full-time school counselor, so I stay pretty busy.
Yes, and we've done another interview where you talk about your recent book.
Yes, I'm an author as well. Exciting, exciting.
You all have many activities, many things that you do, but before we press the record button, you were teasing me with some information. I don't know if you want to start there, but I know I'm chomping at the bit. What it's like to be human in 2021.
He doesn't know because
I don't.
as a trance channel, he's out. So I get to facilitate and I get to ask all the fun questions. And we usually have a small audience, so I ask their questions. But of course, when you, Candace, presented this, what does it mean to be human in 2021? I started to think about it and I wasn't sure where to take that. So I thought, let me get the collective's take on that. And the collective is the group that Will channels regularly once a month, primarily his guides, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, Enoch, and Source. And we also have an ET being that pops in every now and then. But I thought, let me see what they have to say. And so this past Thursday, and this can be found on Will's YouTube channel, The Collective, channeled by William Brown. If you're interested in listening to the whole, it's about an hour long. But I asked, and they're funny. I said, what does it mean to be human in 2021? And the collective said, well, are you saying that you weren't human in 2020 and earlier?
Well,
so they really are comical. That wasn't even their funniest line, but they said, no, we know what you mean. And so it was interesting. And I think a lot of the viewers are going to resonate with this, but what they said is, what the question really is what is it like to be aware in 2021? They explained that in 2020 and earlier, we were seeking knowledge, seeking understanding, seeking our truth, learning, building a knowledge base, a foundation. And at this point, we've done that. We have roots now. We have grounded ourselves. We know what our truth is. And so in 2021, it's about being aware of that truth and standing in that truth.
Wow. That's profound. And I've had goosebumps ever since you started describing how they presented this information to you. That's really quite amazing. And another way of saying that is people are waking up, right? I mean, lots of people are waking up, and we're sort of carried along by that, right?
Right. They did explain that, we never stop learning and growing, and that's not what they meant. That that there's nothing else to learn at this point. It's just that you know enough now to be able to act on it. And the point is, in 2021, we need to act on it. It is time to start helping others, to come together, to start creating the earth we want to live in, helping the earth evolve. It's time for action, and being aware, living your truth every day. And it's interesting. I don't know if your viewers have experienced this, but there have been several defining moments in at least my life where I have been put in a position where I had to speak my truth, as uncomfortable as it would be. And I could name them right now, probably 5. And one of those was very recently. I won't get into it because I know it's a controversial topic, but it was, I at work had to stand my ground with regard to a particular topic. And I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know if I'd be fired or written up or what would happen, and nothing happened. And I stood in my truth. And I find that when you really, when push comes to shove and you stand your ground in a loving way, just knowing that you're going to be protected no matter what happens, the outcome, it's a non-issue. You're fine. You're protected. You're taken care of.
Didn't it feel good that you could do that when in the end? I know when many people are put in a position of claiming or stating or seeming to agree to something that they really don't, that is so uncomfortable. It's always been uncomfortable, but I think it's untenable now. It cannot exist anymore. At least that's the way it feels to me. Is that the way you feel, Will?
Yes. I mean, it's with anything in life, it's the uncomfortable moments that we either advance ourselves and push ourselves and actually take action and do something, or we stay in the place of complacency. Complacency is a nice, warm, cozy little spot. Everyone enjoys it. But when you really, put yourself out there and you hold true to what you know is the truth, and it may be defiant to someone, it's not to you. But if it's uncomfortable, try it, because more than likely the outcome is going to be, well, that was a lot easier than I really thought it was going to be. And the more you do that, it's not to say that you're not going to be confronted, but the more you do that, you realize that the truth that you've built your existence upon is actually the truth. It's not, a far-sighted, thought. It's actually the truth. And speaking your truth is probably one of the hardest things to do to start. But once you begin to speak your truth and you realize that the pushback isn't there, the adverse words are not there, and people actually do take heed to that, and they spend some time in reflection of what you've just said, it becomes very easy to hold your ground and hold your truth.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pondering this issue, of course, since last year. We're a year since everything changed. And I wonder a little bit about this, because a lot of people will privately say, well, I just do it because everyone else is doing it, and I'm just doing that to help people feel okay. And there's this thing, I think Teal Swan talks about it a little bit. We are, as a species, kind of hardwired for survival, depending on other people. I mean, think of all of those other animals and creatures on the planet that actually can walk the day or two after they're born. Well, not humans. Look how absolutely incredibly dependent we are upon our parents, far more than almost any other creature on the planet. And I really wonder about that survival instinct, that hardwired survival instinct of we can't get kicked out because then we'll be on our own and we'll starve. That's a power and instinctual kind of confrontation there, isn't it?
Right. And the collective did talk about that, because after they mentioned standing in your truth, which was a big part of their last channeling, standing in your truth, they said, I explained that it is fearful. Like you said, it is fearful. And they said, well, fear is instinctual, as you mentioned, Candace, because of survival. However, you have to start asking yourself, is this situation a matter of survival? And if not, do I need to be afraid? If it's just about having an uncomfortable conversation or living your truth in the day-to-day, like Will said, most of the time you're not going to get pushback. You think you are. So it's really a mind game. But once you realize you're not going to get pushback and you're not going to get kicked out of the tribe or the community or your family or whatever, you can agree to disagree and it'll be okay. And when you live your truth, it's not in an adversarial manner. It's not about shouting at somebody or being ugly and defensive. It's about living your truth out of love and this absolute knowing that this is in integrity and an alignment with your higher self. You'd be amazed. And so you don't have to be afraid. But you do have to overcome that fear, that instinctual fear, and pause for a moment, recognize it, and then move past it.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, what else would the collective like to share with?
Well, one thing I did want to mention, and again, I don't mean to do all the talking, but he doesn't know what goes on.
It's one of the side effects, I guess,
I've got questions for him.
Good. Well, the only other thing that I really wanted to mention about this last channeling on Thursday was the most powerful, profound statement that they said that night, and that I've heard in a long time. They said, there will be consequences for speaking your truth, but the consequences for not speaking your truth are greater. And that just sunk in and really hit me. Yes, perhaps you will lose a relationship. God forbid, you might be fired. Whatever that is, yes, it might be. But if you trust your team, trust your God, your source, that you're going to be protected, it's really about trust. And when you don't live in integrity and you don't align with your higher self, life's going to be a heck of a lot more uncomfortable, and there will be a lot worse consequences for that. And I don't think anymore, like you said, moving into 2021, we're already in it. I just don't think that the conditions are such that we can live out of integrity anymore.
I think that's just so true. I'm wondering, with your work, with either of you, as you look forward, have you gotten any information about how things might change as we finish out this year and move forward? Any sort of concrete ways of change that might be described? It's hard to kind of imagine how this year is going to play out at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And what I was going to bring up, it's a great segue into this, is for myself, I started out this year with a calling of picking up an instrument and doing something with it. I think we're at a point at which we have to take ourselves so far out of a comfort zone and try something new, try something completely outside of what you normally would even think you could do. For me, it was playing instruments. I've never played an instrument professionally. I have a hard enough time holding a note. But it's amazing when you release yourself to spirit and you allow spirit to guide you through the instrument process or the music playing process,
or whatever your
creative outlet is. For me, it was the music. And who knows, that's just the beginning of the year. Who knows what it'll be by the time, December rolls around. I may do something else, but that's the thing, is if you are begin to open yourself up to stepping out so far outside it's easy to take one step outside your comfort zone and say a certain thing, or maybe do something slightly different. But pick up that thing that you always told yourself, nah, I can't do that. That's not me. That's just not me. Now is the time for it to be you, because everything is surrounding you right now to grow spiritually, energetically, personally. The growth process is very, very ripe right now.
Absolutely. And on that note, that segue, that's interesting. I don't know if you saw my Facebook post recently, but we also channel animals, as you know. And one of the collectives that we spoke with was the Bee Collective. And I just reposted, I was looking through this again in preparation for another book about their quotes. And they said, I asked them, I said, aerodynamically, you all really shouldn't be able to fly. Your bodies are huge, your wings are tiny, and, physics says you probably shouldn't get off the ground. What do you think about that? Do you know, they said, we don't think like that. If we sat around the hive and we contemplated whether we could fly, we probably wouldn't attempt it, because we'd be afraid that we would fall out of the sky. All we know is we have somewhere to be and something to do. And so we go do it. I thought, holy cow, the animals have such profound wisdom for us. But that was, speaking about fear. If you sit around and think all the reasons why you shouldn't or couldn't or can't do something, you won't. You'll be paralyzed with fear. Heaven forbid our bees would sit around the hive and be paralyzed by fear. Can you imagine? We'd be dead. We humans would be dead.
That reminds me, it's like when you try to walk on a balance beam. The real way to walk on a balance beam is to just don't even look down and just put your feet one in front of the other. And if you look down and really study it, you're going to fall off if you concentrate so much on it.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, though, you asked about predictions for 2021 or anything that we might know. I can tell you that, unlike a lot of channelers or psychics, the collective doesn't get into the day-to-day nitty-gritty junk of politics and all of that sort of stuff. And I really actually admire that. Not that the others are bad or incorrect, because I do like to listen to other channelers as well. But with them, I understand they're always taking the higher level paradigm with it. And so what they tell us is that, yes, they use the word chaotic a lot. Things are going to be chaotic. But in terms of politics and chaos and junk like that, they said, politics have been going on forever. It's always been a way of life on Earth. It always will be. You can choose to divest yourself in all of those conflicts, or you can choose to step away and evolve and work on yourself, because that's really what it's all about. You don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of it or worry or have fear about it. So they said, although you're going to see some chaos if you choose to look that way, they really just say, go within, concentrate on your own evolution, and you're going to be just fine. And we are looking at peace on earth, a life that we've never experienced before. It's going to be glorious. I'm very excited. It is going to be a little bit chaotic, but we can choose to delve into that as much as we want or not.
Yeah.
This year, 2021, with its chaos, is actually, like you were saying earlier, very ripe for creativity. It's kind of like a kitchen, some of the kitchens that produce the most wonderful meals and creations, when that person's done, the kitchen can look like a giant mess, right? And if you have a completely good, smooth surface and spotless kitchen, nothing's coming out of it, right?
Right. Yeah, I get accused of that quite frequently. Why do you have to dirty all of the dishes for one simple meal? I said, because when I cook, I put my heart and my love into it, and it requires everything that's here. So and
he's a darn good cook, and I like eating what you make, but I'm the one that has to clean. So yeah.
There you go. That's an amazing way of looking at it, I think. for sure. Well, I really feel like we're the, I wrote this as you were talking. I feel like we, and I mean all humans, every human that's on the planet right now, whether they're just born or ending, you know, their days in their final days, I feel like we're the boots on the ground to usher in this kind of new way of living that's coming. And the interesting thing is we don't really have a playbook, not really. You know, we're kind of creating it and figuring it out as we go, but it's probably the most exciting thing that can be, right?
You know, it's interesting you say that. You know, there isn't a playbook, but yet there is a playbook. It's inside of each of us. It's just laying dormant, right? The playbook has already been written. We have chosen not to flip the pages on it. So if we take that time to, you know, be creative, take that time to explore something new, gather up with other people, that's when the pages begin to turn. That's when the words start to appear in front of you on the playbook. So, you know, it's the fear of, you know, not leaving the hive, which won't turn the pages. But if you know, allow yourself, knowing what's in front of you for 2021, I mean, we can look at it a couple of ways. You know, okay, it's just another year, 2021. We just came out of a really crappy year, 2020. And now, you know, we're into another year. And, you know, turn off TV, turn off the radio, do all that stuff. But yet there's still something missing in the everyday existence, you know, and that really comes down to finding it here and allowing this to open the book, open the pages, and allow it to be the playbook for your existence. You know, not to say to be self-centered on it, but start there, and then you'll learn how to play that symphony for others.
Right.
So.
And the collective has mentioned for many months to get ready, that your doors are going to be beaten down. If you practice any sort of spiritual modality and you help seekers, don't lament the fact that you may not have as many clients as you want, or, you know, things aren't progressing the way you want. Right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern for that. The you know what has not hit the fan yet. And so when it does, they're going to be coming out of the woodwork and knocking on our door and looking for that. So the collective just keeps telling us to hold our beacon, be the beacon out in the world. You don't have to even say anything or do anything. Just hold that love and people will find you. And one of the things that Allison Coe said a while back, and this was at least probably a year ago, maybe it was from one of her clients, but she said that we are in our dreams practicing these things. And so I hang tight to that every night when we go to sleep, we're practicing our role so that when the time comes, we will know it and we will be ready, and we know our role and we're doing it. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about that. I remember that client session she had. That was a good one.
And, you know, and I'd also say too, that, you know, for all of us that work in whatever modality it might be, we're always trying to get the next client, have the next client lined up, you know, and sometimes that in itself is defeating, because you feel as if I have to fill my calendar with every day with some sort of client. When in reality, it's those clients that find you out of the blue, you're not expecting them, are the most important ones. Not to say that every client doesn't come to find you. They are finding you, but there are certain ones that just pop up on the radar out of nowhere, and you know that there's a connection there. You have to get them on the schedule. Those are the ones. But it's, you know, in the midst of filling that calendar, you're forgetting the most important client, self. You're forgetting to have that time for yourself, and having that healing and that repair time, that downtime, that growth time, because you're filling it with everybody else's time. The self time right now is probably the most critical.
But you're right. We are boots on the ground. And
yes.
Like I said, it's coming. It hasn't hit yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, we're filming this or videotaping this in actually right at the middle of March, and this won't air for several weeks. So it'll be interesting to see what's played out in the next little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting you should mention dream time, because I actually wanted to ask Will about that. You know, you channel this collective, and I wondered about your dreaming world, and I wondered if it's changed since before you were channeling to what it is now, and if any of the characters come in and speak to you or.
Yeah, it's interesting. As a child, I had a very robust dream state, and I had some very extreme dreams, and one that was reoccurring, and we've later through channeling figured out what that was. But more into my adulthood and even into this trance channel state, I always, I'll mention to Allison quite frequently, man, I wish I could remember my dreams, or even I wish I would dream, because I don't sense that I'm dreaming. But interestingly, in the last month or so, I've had some very interesting dreams, not with my collective team, but more maybe foreshadowing certain things in my life. Just little snidbits, not that I'm journaling them. I'm a horrible dream journaler. It's very difficult for me to pop out of a dream and start writing stuff down, but I try to remember it. But I also know that when I'm in the dream, I can sustain myself in that dream, and I can sustain myself for longer periods of time in that dream, almost to a lucid type of dream state. I won't say it's a full lucid state, but it is that, I can, if something tragic's happening, I don't check out of the dream quickly just because I know something tragic's happening. I want to let that play out to see what the end is going to be, because it might not be exactly what I'm perceiving it to be right at that moment. So I want to find the end. But, overall, I think because I've been integrated with Enoch my entire life, and now with the collective team as a whole, they're with me when I'm in meditative state. They're with me when I'm with the instruments. They're with me when I'm doing any sort of spiritual work, metaphysical work. So, to get a profound dream from them, I think I'm getting that on a daily basis,
However, you did have several instances of lucid dreaming in the past, probably 6 to 8 months, where it was literally a lucid dream where you felt like it was pretty interesting.
She remembers them more than I do. We'll talk about them in the morning. I have a very horrible memory when it comes to that stuff, but I have been very thankful that I've started dreaming again, which sounds odd because
you just don't sleep well in general.
Right.
Really.
I'm a very, very light sleeper. So I've always been.
Well, that makes sense to me. I mean, even the other day, somebody reposted something that I channeled from Dolores, and I was reading it. I'm like reading it almost like for the first time, because I'm like, well, I wonder where this is going. I mean, came from my aunt, but I channeled from her. I actually like that because I don't have a conscious memory of what I wrote. Right. It makes me feel actually pretty good about the authenticity of claiming that, it's Dolores' energy that came forth and it helped me put those words out. But I wanted to mention the Enoch thing. And I don't think I ever said this to either one of you, but it's been several months now, but not terribly long, certainly less than 6. I had a client who had a session, and one of her questions in her BQH session was she wanted to meet her main guide. And in there, Enoch shows up. And I'd never had this character come in any of my sessions, and it was very brief. She was a very left-brained woman, but I'm encouraging her, and there was very little exchange that happened. But when she came back up out of it, she was like, Enoch, that's the strangest word. I've never heard that before. That's not even a name, is it? And I was like, let me tell you about my friend Will Brown, and I sent her directly to you and your stuff. So I don't know if she's, went and looked you up or even contacted you, but
so what did he say? Did he say he was her primary guide, or?
Yeah, that he was there to sort of begin the whole process of her, walking.
I love it.
The world. And I was like, that's just exactly what happened to Will. I remember when we did another interview there, and I think that was the most spectacular part of her session when it was all over, was her just saying, wow, because she was already denying it and setting it aside as something that couldn't be possible. Yeah. Because there's such a strange name like Enoch, she just had never heard it before.
So she hadn't heard it in church anywhere, huh?
No, not at all.
That's interesting.
I wasn't a churchgoer either. I didn't hear it till much later in my life myself. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
so it does give validity.
Yeah.
Because when he started channeling Enoch, he had never stepped foot in a church, and he didn't know who Enoch. He never read the Bible. He didn't know who Enoch was. So that's kind of interesting, because I have those skills and he has this other skill set. So he and the practitioner, this was before I started practicing BQH, they came out of the room sweating and drained and like, whoa. I said, what the heck happened? Enoch came in. And I mean, his power was like incredible. And he's like, who the heck is Enoch? I'm like, oh my God, what?
It was very intense. I will say that. And
he's powerful.
A number of sessions later, it was still just as intense. As I explain it, at that time, I was being induced into a hypnotic state, laying on a massage table. And there were, as Enoch would come in, my hands would outstretch and come off the table, and they'd stay there for like 45 minutes, just raised up off the table. I can't hold my hands out for 10 minutes. Yeah. But what it felt like, sensation wise, it felt like I was holding two large balls of energy in my hands, swirling energy. And that's what sustained me through that whole process. And so now I know what that feels like. So when I self-induce, I know when Enoch comes in, because that electricity flows right through. Yeah.
And I don't mean to get off on an Enoch tangent, but he's an interesting character for sure.
Yeah. And the main connection is to bring the old teachings into the world now. Yeah, is what the healing and the healing modalities and the ancient teachings into the world now. So,
well, maybe that's Enoch's specialty, is the big introduction for the
for newbies.
Yeah.
Speaking of these energies, because there's people out there who may be watching this who are completely mystified about this whole idea of channeling and tapping into other energies, and I'd like for you to talk about that. But I'd also like my own question inserted within that question is, when you're picking up the instruments now, and you talked about it, spirit driving you, but these different personalities, Michael, Raphael, Enoch, do you feel them in your instrument? They're specific energies as you're using?
That's interesting. No, it's not the same as the collective energy that comes in, the team that comes in. When I sit and I do my little ritual beforehand, and I bless my instruments, I would almost liken it to the energy or the essence or the higher perspective of the instrument itself. What I'm finding is that my instruments get very jealous if I spend more time with one versus the other. And a good example of this was my handpan, which I've had for a while and I've played and I enjoy. And you've witnessed the handpan. Well, now we have a rather large gong that we use, or that I use. Well, when that came in, and I refer to them as female, they're all female energy to me. When I started playing her, in really getting used to her, I spent more time with the gong to just really kind of flesh out the nuances. And I went to pick up my handpan, and you would think that someone came in and softened the metal or something. Every note was just a dud. I couldn't get a tune out of it. So I had to literally sit with my handpan and talk to her and just let her know that, hey, we're all here together. You know, I promise we'll get equal time with everyone. And so now when I sit down before I start a session, I speak to my instruments and I allow them to wake up on their own and allow their energy to start to flow. And that's really the beauty of it all, is just picking up that subtle energy of each one of the instruments, that it has a specific personality, and allowing it to play itself, and just allowing me to be I'll say the instrument to play an instrument. So. But
when you do your channeling, you can tell
absolutely,
the different,
yes.
you feel the different energies. He doesn't remember, but you.
When I'm in trance, on that perspective of it, yes. Just to give you a little insight, a little window into that, as I begin my breathing process, I can feel them almost taking seats behind me, like a stadium seating behind me. And I feel them settle in and move around, and you'll see me move around because their energy is starting to settle in. But as Allison will ask a question, that's when it may shift from Raphael to Michael, or it'll shift from Michael to Source, or, you know, somewhere in between there, or they'll all come together to answer. So each one of those has a different sensation through my body. So what I remember on the other side of that is, hey, you must have asked a certain question because there was some really strong energy that came through at some particular point. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I would say too is, early on when I was beginning my channeling process, self-induced channeling process, it would be almost as if there was two of me, one behind a pane of glass and one in front of a pane of glass. The one behind the pane of glass was the one that was in trance. The one that was in front of the glass was me facing the audience. And I could see my lips move and stuff like that, but I couldn't hear anything. So it was almost like I was in this soundproof booth watching myself speak. And it was very interesting. Take that yet even a little further. Recently, when Allison would request the presence of my Zeta being, and that energy would come in. And the first time it happened, it really, frankly, freaked me out. It was as if I was taking on the face of the Zeta. I was seeing the big eyes, the little pointy mouth type of, situation. And in kind of watching my eyes blink a certain way. It was very odd, but now I've become used to that. So it evolves. So anybody that does Candace, you've been doing this work for quite a while. It evolves. It constantly evolves and grows and fleshes out something new. And that's what, if you just think that your channeling or your modality is just going to stay stagnant. No, if you take time and you really, surrender to the process, and you're surrendering to the process and honoring that, it's going to evolve to the next level. It's going to keep evolving to that next level. So
when you're behind the glass, and this is great, I've never heard you describe it that way. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say they stand next to each other or behind or whatever, but the glass analogy is a spectacular one. So if I can ask the fellow behind the glass a question right now.
Okay.
So as he's watching the fellow up front speak and go through it, what's the train of thought? Or is there no thought? Zero?
There is no thought.
As most meditators know, to have no thought, to be completely blank. But that's that's interesting, because I've always been able to, and this is from a young child on, I've always been able to get myself into a place of, I call it zero thought, my zero place. And frankly, I can do that watching TV. I can do that while I'm doing my woodworking. I can do that while I'm doing anything else, where I'm completely disconnected from everything. And I'm just in that zone of no thought. And Allison has asked me early on in our marriage,
what are you thinking about, honey?
And I'm not, nothing.
Nothing.
No, you have to be thinking about something. No, honestly.
Because women are thinking about 10 things at once. I'm
honestly. So when I go through my induction process and I sit and I take my couple breaths, and it's a certain breathing process that I do. There's a moment at which it's like a light switch and everything goes black. Well, I say black, it's just void. It's just a void. And I'm in that void. And at that point, it's then them. It's their stage. I'm just the mouthpiece for their presence. And so people ask me a lot at the end of a session. So what do you see? What do you sense? What are you looking at? What's going through your mind? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's where it comes into play of not remembering anything, because I'm in such a state, or as they say, stasis. Yeah. I've been put on hold. Pause button has been pressed. Hey, I'm getting younger, that kind of thing. It's just no thought process, because if even there was an inch of thought process to take place, the channeling, I don't think would be there, because you have, like doing mediumship work and you're connecting with others' loved ones, you have a conscious mind that's active, and you have to filter out those things that are coming in rapid fire of the loved ones that are giving you information. And you have to quickly discern whether that's you or whether that's them. And you make that decision like this, and knowing that it's them and not you, and you give that information across. Well, in trance, if you have that thought process going on, you're a conscious channel at that point. You're not a trance channel at that point. So
TRANS channel instead. Big difference between the two. Will, when you come out of a channeling, are you depleted, energized, or neutral?
At first, I was completely drained. I always tell everybody I felt like a wet bag of Jell-O. My body was trying to get back into itself. Think about coming out of a very heavy dream state, and you're awoken very quickly. You kind of feel all disoriented. That's what it felt like. But there was a learning curve with that, allowing the body to adjust to all the different energies that have been flowing through. Typically, I eat something high in sugar, a little bit of chocolate, some oranges, something like that. Now, 2.5, almost 3 years later, when I drop out of trance, or I should say they leave and I'm back into my body, it's within a minute or so. I have to get my eyes adjusted and I'm right back. I don't need the high sugar aspect, but I'm energized at that point. When I do the animals or somebody's higher self, the only ones I get depleted at times is when I'm doing the surrogate healings, because they're just so powerful, and they're 15 minutes of just an extreme, intense energy expression. So,
well, now that you've mentioned that, why don't you describe a little bit about how your surrogate healing works?
Sure. Well,
it's really interesting how, I really appreciate that we work so well as a team, because he has these abilities, and I kind of am the idea person a lot of times, or the facilitator, and hold the energy. But I don't know, we were just driving down the road and he was already channeling and whatnot. And I knew that there was this friend of a friend that needed some healing. And I thought, do you think we could maybe do a surrogate healing? I don't know. I just came up with this idea about doing surrogate healing. And this was before, I don't even know if I was BQH trained, or I was very new. So I didn't know about that was a common thing, surrogate healing. And I asked him and see if these things resonate. So I'll come up with these ideas that I think are inspired and they'll resonate. So they resonated with you. And the very first one we did was for that relative, but I think the second one was the girl that did, that had stage 4 cancer or something.
Yeah. And I mean, it was a process. I mean, it's a learning process. We sat in the chairs and we treated it like another channeling aspect. I sat in, I tried to take a couple deep breaths and get into my trance state, but I couldn't. I felt them settle in, but then I also felt my team step back. They've stepped away, but they were still present. But my body was going through so much pain and discomfort that I couldn't lock into a trance state. pulled myself out. I told Allison, I said, this isn't going to work right now. But I knew that there was a lesson in all that. So I asked my team, I said, all right, guys, why? What took place here? And what came up was, and I called it an analog. I needed someone to hold that individual's energy. So the individual that I'm connecting to that has the ailment, I needed a third person, somebody that would hold their energy, hold it, anchor it, whatever you want to call it. Allison is the facilitator. I'm the channel. I needed that third person, basically a triad. Once we got that third person in, and it was explosive energy influx. Sometimes there's spoken words. Most of the times it's just going through maybe just a couple common words, but then a healing takes place, a verbal healing takes place, some sort of healing takes place, and then it drops out. But it's a very short, quick situation. And I mean, we've done several of them, maybe a half a dozen of them or more, and they've all been extremely profound for the client.
And it's interesting because then when I started in BQH and seeing on the forum, people were doing this, and they would usually just do two people, the facilitator and the channel or the surrogate or whatever. And so I was like, why do we have to have a third person? Nobody else has to have a third person. So I asked the collective, like, why do we have to have a third person? And they're like, because we said so. Because that's how you guys work. That's how you work. You know, don't judge yourself against other people. It's not about that. This is the way they work, and this is the way you're going to work. And it's just the way it is. And so we have a very trusted person who acts as our third person, but that's why he couldn't get in, because his body was going through the pain, what the sick person was experiencing. And so he couldn't experience that pain and channel the healing energies. It wasn't going to work. And it wasn't for me to be in pain as the surrogate either. And not to say our surrogate is ever in pain, but they do feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. They will feel so that they can share with the person who's ill what they were experiencing, and it makes it more legit. They don't know what the situation is or what the illness is. The surrogate does not know that. Right. So then the surrogate will say something, and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what. At
the time, and this is for any of the channelings we do, Allison is the only one that knows anything about the client. I remove myself out of the equation. I don't want to know. All I want to know is, like, if we do a pet channel, I want to know the name and type of animal, a picture. If I do a surrogate, I just want to know the name. But other than that, I don't want to know anything else. And it's a very profound.
And so that's how these things just evolve. Things just evolve. Like when we're experiencing stuff with our cats, we had one that was on death's door, it seemed like, and the other one was exhibiting behaviors such that I was ready to put him down because I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I thought, this was a Friday, thank goodness. I said, before I take him to the vet on Monday to have him put down, let's just see if we can talk to him. Because you talk to everybody else, maybe we can talk to them too. So we sat and I called the cat in, and the cat came in and started talking to me. And it was so profound. I was in tears, and the cat Dasher was like, I'm not ready to transition. And I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. And I said, well, we've got to work this out. And so we came to an agreement, and his behaviors changed overnight. And I talked to this. So I thought, well, if that works, let me talk to the other two. We had 3 at the time. So I talked to the elderly one that I thought was on death's door. And she gave me some profound wisdom about life and death and how it's experienced from the animal kingdom, because they don't experience pain and death the way we do. It's not as traumatic for them like it appears to us. And she said, also, I'm not ready to transition. I want to be with my humans as long as possible. And so it completely changed. And I love cats, and I wasn't like mean to them or anything because of their behaviors, but I was just frustrated. But I love them, but it still made me even more compassionate to them, unbelievably compassionate when you can have that kind of conversation with them. So anyway, the point was not to get off on a tangent on animals, but just that it evolves based on what's going on in your life, or what kind of client presents to you, or what spirit has in mind for you. And it's so much fun, just so much fun to be an open vessel for this sort of stuff.
I'll put links to the couple of shows that we've done already with my own animals. And because that you have done this for so many characters in my own home and on my farm. Everything's really changed since then, and I'm always remembering the things that happened. And you both might be interested in knowing that Ruru has really come out of her shell. I can pick her up.
Oh,
I can love on her from behind. She still every once in a while kind of goes like this, but she's a sweetheart, and I can even call her and she will come, especially if I go Ruru, and I do this with my hand, and sometimes then she'll come put her head there. So this was a cat that was terrified about being touched, and it's taken, well, that was last summer, but that she came into our house. But the conversation you helped facilitate between her and her little kitten, Sammy, it's just changed everything, the dynamic in our house and the other animals too. And I highly, highly recommend Will and Allison for speaking with your pets and all the other things as well, the surrogate healing and the sessions and the BQH sessions. And don't forget about Allison's book. Is there anything that we're leaving out today?
Well, we do offer, we have free things. I want people to know that they can tune in. We're not all about, just getting clients or something, but we offer free channeling of the collective every second Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. You can find that on our website, palmandlotus.com. And so tune in, because we have the Zoom link. You can watch it via Zoom no matter where you are. We had a guy from Thailand who was tuning in, and it was 7:30 in the morning his time, I think, and 7:30 in the evening our time. So yeah, we offer that for anybody who'd like to watch how he works, hear some of the profound wisdom, or find that on his YouTube channel as well.
And I know you do classes in Reiki and things in the treehouse, and as I actually am seeing that in the background there, and I'm here in my studio where I've been for, gosh, has it really been that long? It's been 7 years. I've been in here 7 years. The energy is so different now, and every year as it collects the healing energies. Are you feeling that the same way in your treehouse?
We're kind of new. We only opened last January, so it's been about 14 months. The energy has been profound from the get-go, and we've talked to the collective about that. And we did a lot of intentional things in the building of this in terms of crystals and things that we've incorporated into the walls and things. And so it is really neat. Have you noticed a difference though since last year?
I would just say that, and I was talking to somebody about this last night. We had a gathering here last night. During our grand opening, I did a channeling, and there was a period of point while I was in trance and it was one of the very few times that I get this sensation of something outside of the collective that I'm channeling. And it felt as if the energy or the people in the audience were getting up and moving to the pew that you can see over my shoulder here. It didn't bother me. I just let the thought go through. Well, then when I got done, I told Allison, I said, I didn't want to look over there. I said, are there people on the pew? She said, no, why? She said, because I felt like people getting and sitting over there. Well, when I said that to the crowd, 2 to 3 people raised their hand and said, we felt this rush of energy come and sit in that pew. They filled up the
various
pew.
Beings, yes.
Various beings, various energy. So we asked that Allison brought that up during a channeling and asked why that took place. Why is that pew filling up? And the basic answer to it all was spirits coming here not only to enjoy what you're doing, but they're coming here to learn as well. So it's, they
were like guides in training.
Right.
Said.
So they're, just as much as we love and we train and we do certain things, they enjoy taking in what we're doing and learning from us as well, because they may not have experienced, a physical body. So they want to be here. So I say that to say that, yes, I do come up here at times, just myself, and I stand in the middle here, and I do feel a greater sense of energy in the space. And I agree with you. The more you do it, it's layering of the cake. you know,
layering that love
yeah.
of, from your clients, the love of the beings that are here and the people who come in to share in this experience and leave their love with us. Yes, it can't help but accumulate.
Yeah.
I love that story about the pew. It reminds me of Dolores once telling me, you know, because there's some controversy of Dolores and channeling and her history, etc. But I remember once waking up. I don't remember if it was a channeling or a dream. For me, sometimes they're interchangeable as memories. But she said, you know, since I talk to you like this, and then I tell other beings some of this conversation, what's going on, in a way, she says, I'm channeling you to others over here. And that was such a profound statement to me. You know, other beings who don't have any connection with living beings, humans. And I just love that. I love that about the spirit guides in training. How perfect is that?
Yeah.
Where is the treehouse located? Let's end there. In case somebody wants to come to one of your events in real life, because you do the collectives, right? In real life, you just live, but people can show up, right?
Right. So we are outside of Charleston, South Carolina, in Monk's Corner. treehouse-events.com. You can see our calendar, and there are things that are free. There are things that are remote, and most things, if they're remote, they're also in person. So anyone who is local or within driving distance is welcome to come. Yep. We do offer Reiki trainings probably once every quarter or so, in person, of course, and scholarships are available for veterans and also for veteran dependents. We don't do that online or remote. We don't feel called to do that remotely at this point, but for those that are local are welcome to take advantage of that. And I hope that some of your viewers will tune into some of our free remote events. We'd love to see some new faces on Zoom.
Super. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Will and Allison Brown, and Palm and Lotus, right?
palmandlotus.com. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I would like to ask the viewers to stay tuned to the next installment of Quantum Realms 2021. Let's see what others have to say about being human in 2021. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.